Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hey everyone, this is Dempsey from Panasonic, and as we kick things off today, I just wanted to put out a safety tip for our customers. When we got into the pandemic situation, we had a lot of questions about customers, the employee safety, particularly for being able to wipe down and sanitize the devices that they're using within their facilities because they're often shared. So Panasonic put out communication to our customers, letting them know, yes, absolutely, our devices can be sanitized. We gave some very specific details as well on what types of things they could use, what types of cleaners the units could be used with. So again, wanted to make sure that our customers had that safety tip, understood that they could keep their workers safe, particularly for the shared devices within the warehouse.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, this is Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I will be joined by Jim Dempsey. He is the Director of U.S. Business Development and Partnerships at Panasonic. And Panasonic does a number of different things, but they do cover the warehousing space as well. Had them on the show previously to talk about some stuff that they're offering. So we're going to talk to him today about some of the technologies that Panasonic has put in place recently. Talk a little bit about how they're helping to efficiently and effectively optimize workflows for the warehousing space, and a couple of other things too as well. So Jim, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey Kevin, good. How about yourself?
Doing all right. So welcome to the show, and happy to have you on. So why don't you give us just a little bit of a brief overview of Panasonic, specifically in the warehousing space. Panasonic kind of does a number of different things, and people are certainly familiar with the name. But talk to us specifically about what do you guys do in our industry?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting. Everyone recognizes the Panasonic name, and just to kind of set the stage for the listeners out there. Panasonic is well known for our Blu-ray players, CD sets, I guess, right? Everyone knows us that way, but really over 90% of our global revenue is B2B. We actually do very little B2C business these days. So when we look at what we're doing with our customers, particularly in the supply chain space, we're dealing in kind of that B2B, scenario, and the products and solutions that we're offering obviously are for that market. So, but that said, one of the interesting things that we've seen over the past year is really an acceleration of, we call it omni-channel, right? It's kind of been around for a while, but we've seen an acceleration, for two reasons. One, just buyer behavior changed, and that buyer behavior change, with everyone ordering onesie twosies from their home, created a lot more smaller orders. And then you look at the ripple effect of how that impacts the entire supply chain, even back to the manufacturing side.
Right.
We had a lot of customers who were scrambling to say, hey, I got to just keep up, right? And so some investments that maybe would have been made a year or two from now got pulled forward. So we saw a lot of activity that way. And then, what we're seeing right now is, really because of what happened for the past 12 months, there's a lot of our customers who found the gaps and the things that weren't working, right? They found what was broken, right? Because their system got stressed. So again, right now we're seeing a lot of customers who are coming back saying, okay, I got through the crunch, right? We're not fully out of it yet, obviously, but now I understand where my gaps are, and then let's start addressing, how can we help fill some of those gaps and help them, get their system, repaired, if you will, and updated.
Gotcha. Yeah. Definitely been an interesting time for sure. And like you said, I've certainly heard it from, a number of other companies as well, and people in the industry that, just like you said, a lot of companies, they had to pull in their 2-year, 3-year, 5-year plans in some cases and pull them into now to be able to keep up with the changes that have been going on and just kind of the increase in demand overall. So, from Panasonic's standpoint, what kind of technologies have you guys put in place to kind of handle those new spikes in demands and help these customers that are trying to meet the new demand?
Yeah, so our folks, when you look at kind of the IoT of supply chain and kind of the overall structure of how folks are implementing their systems, it goes all the way up even to the AI level, right? Folks are getting into that these days. But as you drop down a layer, you get to the business intelligence, the data, then you get the networks, and then you really at the smart edge where the activity is actually happening, right? The transactions are happening within your network, whether it's the manufacturing facility, transportation between manufacturing to distribution, what's going on in distribution, the trucking, the last mile, even from a retail buying queue perspective. There's all this data that's going on out there, all this transactions. And where we focus is enabling that smart edge, because that again, if you're not able to capture the transactions and the activity at the smart edge and as well share real-time information with the workers who are at the edge, that'll obviously impact your overall, efficiencies, and as well, lower your customer satisfaction rates ultimately. So where we focus is looking at those edge technologies. Panasonic is well known in the industry for our Toughbook brand mobility products that are B2B enterprise devices. They are not consumer devices. They're built for purpose. They're built to last, so we can make sure the application is available to those users, because if they can't get to the application at the point that they're doing their work, then it kind of blows the whole ROI out of the water. And the other piece is making sure that those devices, because they are smart and they're on the network and customers are putting in sensors throughout their network, it's a smart device, which means it's also an entry point into the network, a potential entry point for bad folks who want to do malicious things. So we're also making sure that hardened technology is also hardened from a security perspective, network security and software, so that we're not inadvertently exposing a customer's network, by putting, say, either a consumer device or that won't last, or a consumer device that can't be secured appropriately to meet their needs.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that is, it's one thing to be able to address the technologies and make sure that they're keeping up with the technologies, but I think you have, a great point there about on the back end, making sure that they're secure, because the more connected we become, and the more technology we implement, the more we're potentially exposing ourselves, like as you mentioned, to some bad operatives who want to try and get in and do whatever they want to do. So it's definitely interesting, and it's interesting too, because I actually talked to someone recently who told me that they actually had somebody come in and basically hijack their data and hold it for ransom. So it was a smaller company too, which was surprising to me. So this threat is certainly out there. So it's good that you guys are addressing that. So, one thing, in there is definitely, having visibility into what's going on, like as you mentioned with the smart edge, and at the edge where the end users are actually at, utilizing those hardware components and the Toughbooks and things of that nature. So, getting better visibility into the supply chain overall has certainly been something that kind of the pandemic, I think, has shed more light on, because supply chain has become such a focus. So from the initial standpoint of manufacturing all the way to the last mile and delivering it to the customer, and the end user, there have always been kind of some silos, and there still are, definitely, for companies, but how do companies get into breaking down these silos and gaining better visibility into the overall supply chain?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's a lot of the work that's going on right now in the supply chain space as a whole. Is like you said, I've got my YMS, my yard management system, I've got my warehouse management system, I've got my retail execution system, and planning and manufacturing systems, and really a lot of the work right now is looking to connect those, right? And that's where when we talk to customers about kind of their challenges and really looking, okay, where are they in that, I call it the IoT continuum, right? Where are you in your journey, right, to get to the point where I guess where everyone would love to get to, right, eventually, is this autonomous AI-driven, system that things are happening and I'm just getting alerts and the system's making the dynamic changes through whether it's my manufacturing plant, my transportation plan, or my labor plan, or even the last mile delivery, out and routing out to the customer. So, that data, if you will, there's kind of this common, we look at folks like Tableau as an example. We see a lot of folks of putting in the network, right? That's kind of the first step. We're putting in the network. We're getting the smart devices there. We're starting to capture the data, right? And it's at that point that some people kind of get overwhelmed because now I've got all this data. What do I do with it, right? Yeah. What do I need to action on right now? What can I leave to this afternoon? What can I look at tomorrow? Trying to sort that. And that's where these business intelligence tools come into play, which allow you to kind of rationalize the data that you're seeing and understanding which ones are most important, and create dashboards, right? Graphical dashboards that very quickly, give you the information you need in the form you need it and that you can action on. And then, from there, that's where, you see folks making investments in the artificial intelligence world. One of the bigger players out there, Blue Yonder, formerly JDA, they actually they acquired an AI company several years ago, and in fact, then changed their company name, to Blue Yonder, which was the acquisition they made. But you look at what they're talking about, and I think there's a lot of folks out there kind of not mimicking, but also kind of reinforcing this message is, having that, call it control tower, where I can see what's going on across my network from manufacturing, to the doorstep. So, yeah, a lot of work is going on. The interfaces that are going on between, making sure that data comes from the manufacturing system into that database, making sure the transportation and the warehouse management, the retail, it's all coming in, to a central area where then I can then take that data as a supply chain executive and kind of make better decisions and actually have a better idea of what's actually happening in my network in real time.
Definitely, yeah. And I think you said something really important in there is like there's so much data swirling around, and there's so much data being generated now from all these different technologies, and then it's, what do we do with the data, right? Once we have it, right? There's so much, and to be able to digest it and sort through it and analyze it as, an individual, a person, is just incredibly time consuming. So things like the AI that you mentioned, the machine learning, is certainly going to be able to help us to, I guess, consume that and make the proper decisions in a more timely manner. Because by the time, in some cases, by the time you get through the data that you actually need and do the full analysis, it may be too late to even take the action. The speed that we're moving. So it's good that those things are coming in. So, one thing about that too is, we look from, instead of having, and that's kind of a reactive nature in a sense, right? And, we look from shifting from being reactive to, proactive in kind of the tracking and predictive kind of analysis and different types of maintenance models. So talk to us a little bit about that and that shift that's kind of taking place.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah. I think there's a couple different kind of good examples. One, I kind of use two different examples actually. One is, I call it the social media influencer who showed up a pair of sneakers they just bought, and all of a sudden the world goes on fire and says everyone's got to have these things, right? So with a system that has visibility to even to that out to the customer on the retail side, as an organization, as a manufacturer and warehousing executive, I can see that happening, and I can start revamping or ramping up, if you will, my manufacturing plan. So I take that buying signal that's coming in, call it from the right side of my network, and I'm now able to then start dynamically ramping up and changing my plan in the manufacturing plant for what I'm making, when I'm making it, and how much of it I'm making. And then as a supply chain side, I can also make a decision on, okay, that demand is going to hit before my manufacturing plan can put the inventory in place. Do I have that product in other parts of my network, right, scattered out in my different on trucks or in warehouses and stores? Can I reallocate that inventory to fulfill the initial wave while then my manufacturing plan catches up? So that's a very high level example of taking a buying signal, and then it ripples through, like I said, back to manufacturing. Because even in manufacturing, the downtime, right? The unplanned downtime is the killer, right? Because I've got my production plan, I've got my promise dates, I've got all my transportation, labor, and everything set up in my system based on the plan, and then the machinery goes down, right? So being able to have visibility in that machine-to-machine area to understand that, hey, there's a vibration coming along on this particular machine means it's probably going to have a failure. Let me address it now, right? In planned maintenance, rather than have it disrupt the entire chain. So, we're seeing a lot of that predictive piece happening, within the manufacturing side, where called manufacturing 4.0, as it's kind of referred to these days. Being more predictive and prescriptive in maintaining the equipment and being able to manage the planned downtimes, the shifts of, when you shift from one product to another, or whether it's food for recipes and things, there's cleaning and maintenance that have to happen in between. Being able to do that, in a more organized way, is one example of manufacturing. And then, as I mentioned on the supply chain side, things like that buying signal coming in for the influencer could be, hey, there's a typhoon about to go through Asia, and we were going to ship everything via ocean. Now I can't. So do I shift that to air? Right. Maybe. And then if I do shift to air, then how is that going to impact when it's going to arrive at my facilities? Because then I have to adjust my labor plans. And I also have to look at, on the delivery side, what mechanisms or entities will I use to affect that last mile delivery as well to meet the promise date.
Definitely, yeah, and there's a lot of interesting points there, because certainly I think with the pandemic itself, it's kind of highlighted just how something could happen, and anything could happen. Like you just mentioned, the typhoon, right? And it totally disrupts the supply chain and what you need to do.
I mean, look at the Suez Canal, right?
Exactly.
We just had a real good example of something unplanned, right?
Yeah, so you kind of need to be able to know what to do, and like you said, have the plan in place to be able to deal with those types of things, and then understand the full ripple effect through the entire supply chain, and how do you kind of combat that, and how do you deal with that to keep your business running and keep up with the demand that's coming. Really interesting point. I love the examples there too. So Jim, are you a sneaker guy? I got to ask. You brought up that example. Are you into sneakers?
Yeah. Not really. Just more a running shoe. But I don't collect them. I just use them until they wear down, and then I get the next one. My wife, though, and this is actually, it's interesting. It kind of bears on kind of what we're talking right now. She loves shoes, running shoes, but she'll order 10 from Zappos. They get delivered, and then she keeps one, returns the other 9. Right. But you look at that. That's what's happened. That's what in a sense is causing. It's a good example of what's causing all the pressures on the supply chain, because people are shopping online like that, and they're ordering these things like that. And then the other piece that I think a lot of people don't even look at is the whole reverse logistics.
Right.
You look at, my wife orders 10 things, she keeps one, the other 9, as a retailer and as a transportation network, I have to figure out how to get that back in. Right. And then what do I do with it when I get it back in? And you look at the holiday season, I think they said online buying, when it was astronomical, right off the chart growth this year. And they also said, I think it was something like 30% of everything that was ordered online got returned.
Wow. Right.
So you look at the massive amounts of goods that were shipped during the holiday season, and then figure a third of that had to go back through the system. So that's another challenge that we're talking to customers about, because facilities weren't really designed to take that level of return volume. Yeah. And so now they're having to allocate space and labor resources, to receive these things, store them. They have to triage them and figure out what to do with them. That's a whole other, we think about the outbound side, but there's still a whole bunch of stuff happening on the inbound side too.
And now a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Supply Chain Mavens. The past year has been full of fascinating and complex supply chain news, from shortages and forecasting challenges to issues with COVID-19 test components to the never-before-seen speed to market of the vaccine. In the past year, logistics and supply chain professionals like you have been nothing short of miracle workers. Supply Chain Mavens helps your team to continuously improve by developing tailored training solutions to enhance your team's competencies so they can successfully work across all aspects of supply chain. They offer exam preparation for the coveted APICS, certified in logistics, transportation, and distribution designation, as well as education in topics across the supply chain. Visit them at supplychainmavens.net/new warehouse to learn how they can help you advance your team's performance. That's supplychainmavens.net/new warehouse. Now back to the show. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the increase in reverse stuff and returns is just insane. And, it's always been, managed a couple returns departments in my career, and it's never fun. Yeah. It's always messy. So, figuring out the way to do it, because you have, I guess the difference between shipping it out is that, there's a standard and all these different things. But when you're counting on a customer to, follow specific directions and things in a return policy, there's so many different customers, so many different ways of thinking, so many different ways that they're going to return that. It's not always the way that you're expecting it to be returned, with the information you need and how to process and all those different things. So definitely an interesting point there. And it'd be interesting to see even what technologies come out that help with that reverse logistics process as well. And, I'm curious, actually, I saw something, thinking about reverse logistics, but, and the sortation process and things of that nature. And, as I was looking at the Panasonic ProMatDX stuff, I did see that there was a sortation system that you guys have that utilizes projections onto the boxes. So can you talk a little bit about that, and how does that really work? And I'm most curious probably where did that idea come from too, because it is a pretty interesting idea.
Yeah. It's called our sort assist product, and really that you're right. It's a combination of cameras and projection, right? Yeah. And really was born. We had some customers in the transportation segment that had kind of their smaller facilities that were out on kind of the edge of their network that weren't automated, but they still do a decent volume of packages, and they were struggling a little bit with the sorting process, because as the trucks are coming and things are being offloaded, and then they have to be sorted and put onto the individual vehicles to go to the last mile. They were manually having to they had basically a line of people standing there on either side of this rolling rack as the boxes are coming down, and they would assign each of these people, hey, you've got these 5 zip codes, you've got these 5 zip codes, you've got these 5 zip codes. Remember what they are, number one, and then 2, these things are coming down the line, so you got to look at it and then keep it moving, right? And then make sure you get the right box into the right chute, right? So what we were able to, and so you also combine that with the fact that in the warehouse there's a lot of turnover, so just as you got, Joe all up to speed on the 5 zip codes that he needs to look for, and kind of gotten the process down and got efficient, he leaves, and now you've got a new guy or a new girl, right, behind him. That now I got to train that person, and then productivity, takes a hit. So the concept around it was kind of simple. Is we're using cameras to read, the zip codes, and then we're projecting a number and a color onto the top of that package. So for Joe. Hey, Joe, all you need to know is if you see number 1, an orange number 1 with an orange circle on it, you grab that. That's yours, right? So it was very easy to train, new employees, because they didn't have to memorize zip codes. All you had to know was the color and the number that that was theirs, and all those go down your chute, right? And that also allowed, the line to move a lot quicker. So that was a good example of just, again, you're not going to use that maybe your main facility where you have more automation, but out in the peripheral edge of the network where you don't have as much automation, it was helping to solve that productivity problem and streamlining that sortation process.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I when I saw the video, I was kind of like, wow, what is this? Because I hadn't seen something like that that's using the projection. I mean, I've seen projections are being used in the warehouse, but for like signage and things like that, but for the sortation process. I mean, it's definitely really cool. So I love to see it. So I'm going to put that on the website too, so people can understand what we're talking about there as well. So I'm curious, before we wrap up here, my last question for you is, what are the biggest problems that you think customers are having right now that you guys at Panasonic are looking to develop solutions for in the near future?
Yeah, I think that right now a lot of customers are looking at, they're making that investment to basically fix their system, right? A lot of that we talked about, investments kind of get pulled forward. The challenge is, I kind of use the analogy, you're trying to change the tires on a car that's running around a track. You can't stop the car, right? So one of the things that we're working with customers on is how can they start implementing that smart edge technologies, the newer technologies, if you will, into their environments without disrupting, right? Because certainly there's a hardware aspect. If you look at kind of just the footprint of the technology that was out there for the mobile devices, as an example, Win Mobile, Win C gone away, right? So, and all the devices that were running those applications are also 8, 9, maybe 10 years old, and you can't get parts for them. So they're faced with two things. One, I got to bring in new hardware, and the choice of operating system right now is pretty much moving to the Android platform. So that's a new platform for them to get adjusted to, and it has its own ecosystem of needs different from what they were used to. But they also have to look at the software side of things, right? How can the WMS needs to be upgraded? I mean, maybe I'm using terminal emulation today, the old green screen stuff, but I'm going to go to a modern interface at some point. So the challenges that our customer have right now is how do I keep the ship moving, the car moving, and be able to start adapting to these environments. So our technology, what we're working on with them, is allowing them to bring in our modern, Android-based platforms, be able to run those devices. We'll support the legacy, green screen applications, but also support the new applications. So a customer doesn't necessarily have to do a big bang replacement of everything all at once. They can do a phased implementation. So a lot of the work we're doing right now is really around the Android platform, and even in some cases creating applications for customers to help them with their voice picking activities. And, these devices are now more touchscreen interface, right? The younger generation's used to using Android and iOS phones. They don't really want the brick on the stick with the keyboard and punching keys anymore. So again, we're helping customers adapt to that market. And as well, on the forklift side, we're seeing a lot of activity there, putting tablets onto the forklifts, because again, that hardware is aged, but they need something that's more modern that can also support, the legacy, but then gives them flexibility to remove the device and redeploy that asset somewhere else within the organization in the facility when needed, right? So those are kind of two, to highlight a couple things, two things we're doing, mostly around that shift in the operating system and the devices that are happening.
Interesting. Yeah. And I love that you called it a brick on a stick. That's pretty good. That's the first time I heard that. So I'm curious, we talked about the younger generation and being more comfortable with the touchscreen, things of that nature. How much are you seeing that what's happening like in people's personal life with technology and like the consumer world with technology? How much do you guys take away from that and try and bring that ease of use into like the warehouse?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often tell people it's like having technology in search of a problem is a bad way to go about your day, because you can end up interfering and slowing down a process, particularly in a warehouse where you're doing many thousands of picks across your network a day, and if you slow people down even by a couple milliseconds, it catches up to you. Yeah. So really, what we look at a lot of different technologies, emerging stuff, even the virtual reality, stuff, drones and things like that. But what we try to do is deploy the appropriate, technology, right? As an example, one of our platforms that's Android based, I mentioned the voice picking, we can deploy that on an Android based device that has a touchscreen interface for when the user needs to interact with it. But we also combine that with voice, so everyone's used to using Siri, Google Voice, all that today, right? And so this allows them to essentially talk to the warehouse management system, talk back and forth to get their queues and their tasks, rather than have to, look down, like I said, at the brick and the stick, entering keys. It also, the other benefit to that system, not only am I more efficient and I make less errors, my hands are free and my eyes are free, right? So it's a safety thing too. So now I'm not head down cruising through the warehouse, maybe hitting somebody with a forklift, or getting run over by a forklift because I'm not looking. I now can be safer, and I can also be more accurate in what I'm doing. So, we look at a lot of the cool new things, but we also try and take an approach of, does that really improve things, or does that just slow things down, right?
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I was curious about that because I see a lot of the technologies that are coming out in our space. It seems like a lot of stuff is sort of mimicking what we're seeing like in our personal lives, like outside of the warehouse too. So it's pretty cool stuff. So, yeah. Jim, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. Really interesting discussion about what's kind of going on out there and what you guys are doing. And love to learn about that projection system as well. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
How can people find out more information about Panasonic on the supply chain side of things?
Yeah, so we've got, obviously, for the ProMat event that's going on right now, we've got a property stood up on the web, but at na.panasonic.com, you can find all kinds of information about, not only the devices, but you can also look by industry and see some of the cool things that we're doing to help our customers, kind of get to that digital supply chain goal that they're trying to move to, and to help them, essentially, put visibility as well as, the right systems in place to make sure they're efficient and able to meet the demand that their customers are bringing to them.
Okay, great. And we'll put that information and the link at thenewwarehouse.com as well. So, Jim, thank you again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.